Every woman I know was trained and taught from childhood to fear one thing above everything else, and that was ending up alone and unmarried. Almost none of them, though, were taught to fear ending up broke. And I find that very interesting. I've spent years thinking about the fact that I think women have been trained to fear the wrong thing entirely. Because from where I'm standing as somebody who's owned my own property, run my own businesses, funded my own life, travel, health issues, been able to fund and fix those issues because of having money. The question that I ask myself at nighttime is not what's going to happen if I'm alone in 10, 15 years? What will happen if I never get married? Who am I if I never get married? No, the question is, how do I make sure that I continue to be well resourced so that I can keep buying my freedom? And so it's so important that we dig into these things as women, because from childhood, you're always hearing that men are providers, that essentially money comes from and through men. And often women are not hearing, or they are hearing, they're being told all the time, don't leave it too late, you'll end up alone, your standards are too high, you're too independent. These days you can be too feminist, or just being a feminist is a problem, right? Men don't like successful women. Freeze your eggs, hurry up, settle down. But we rarely, really from girlhood, are training women to build assets, learn to negotiate, understand investing, protect your earning power, understand debt, how to use it, have an emergency fund, okay? Understand retirement planning. Women are really just taught that money comes through men. And so a lot of those fears around ending up alone and unmarried receive a lot of cultural attention. And then when it comes to having your own money, well, there's not so much attention given to women having their own money outside of the container of a relationship with a man, a marriage to a man. And that is not accidental. It's a pattern. But the problem is that that pattern has financial consequences. And so when I'm online and talking to people, even offline, sometimes I think you've got the wrong thing in mind. You're in debt, you can barely pay your bills, and you're worried about a man being attracted to you. You're worried about being chosen. You're still spending inordinate amounts of money on attracting a man, being in the right places at the right time, when your foundation is not solid. Your foundation as an adult woman, and people don't like it when I talk about this, but as adult women, we should be functioning psychologically and financially like adults. That's the point. Okay. And of course, the big assumption underneath all of this, the big assumption is that financial security and stability is achieved through a husband, through a man, okay? But the reality is often more complicated. And I've spoken about this many a time on TikTok. When you look at the actual statistics, when you look at households and marriages, women are significant contributors financially and have been for a very long time, especially in certain cultures, especially in certain classes. Women are the ones, without their wage or salary, you cannot keep that household ticking along. And I'm not talking about the luxuries and the extras. I'm not even talking about date nights here. We're talking about basic household expenses. Okay? And marriage itself does not automatically protect you as a woman from debt, poverty, obviously things like redundancy, illness, financial abuse, unemployment, okay? And so many women become financially vulnerable inside of a relationship, not despite the inside the relationship. Inside the relationship is when the money problems begin, where they may accrue more debt, where some financial abuse may be occurring. You see it all the time. In fact, if you go and listen to a lot of married couples talk about their money problems, there was a woman going viral on TikTok. For a family of 6, they've got something like $120 for groceries. She's married, right? It is a myth that men are financial providers. And that isn't just because of the economy. and the fact that in this day and age, a household can't be kept running on one salary. It's not simply because of macroeconomics. Okay. Money is a renewable neutral resource. The source of money is not men. Money is a renewable neutral resource. It does not have an agenda. There are no isms when it comes to money. So as a woman, you absolutely can generate your own money on your own terms. Because like I say, getting married and being in a relationship is not automatically going to guarantee that you will not experience financial issues moving forward. And quite frankly, if you speak to a lot of women who cohabit with men, there was a lady on TikTok, she did a side-by-side spreadsheet comparison, okay, of her spending before and after moving in with her boyfriend. And there were certain costs that did increase because of the boyfriend, specifically on a monthly basis. It's so important to actually even know your numbers as a woman, instead of just following a lot of the conditioning and the programming blindly. And like I say, in reality, when you speak to married couples, the woman is a significant, consistent financial contributor. And without her salary, that household would not be ticking along. And so I find it grossly irresponsible when women do not become financially literate in the first place, okay, and seem to think that when it comes to big money decisions, understanding money, that can wait until they're married, because supposedly their husband's the one that will figure that out. Men do not have special knowledge about money that women don't have. They've had access to financial institutions and financial structures longer than women. That is true. It was only in the 70s that women could have their own bank accounts. And I always find it so bizarre. There's always one or two obtuse people in the comments who say that's not, it is true. That is true. Right? And so it is true that women have had less access to financial infrastructure and ownership. They've had less access over time compared, as it were, to men more generally. Okay. And so what you need to understand is that the risk is not that you're single. The risk is that you're not learning to build financial security independently of another adult, like independent of another adult. And you need to function like an adult when it comes to your money. This is very important, right? As a single woman, for me, money has never come from men. My money comes from my earnings. It's because I decided this is the lifestyle I want. This is the quality of life that I want. And this is the quality of life I'm having. Okay? That was my decision. And so I have done what needs to be done, and I continue to do what needs to be done. This is one of the reasons why you should be subscribed, because this is where I share the things that single women need to be thinking about when it comes to building a life beyond, instead of, separate to, for whatever reason, circumstance or choice, men. Okay, if your life is not oriented around a man or being in partnership with a man, you have to understand money. And there are macroeconomics to understand. And then, of course, there are kind of micro financial decisions that we have to make as single women. Okay, I have to carry my own contingency plan. And these things for me are not remarkable. I've gotten used to it. It's my norm. Okay, they are simply the things that I need to do and I needed to understand in order to be responsible for my own life. And yes, there are liabilities, there are risks, there are challenges when it comes to that. Okay, and so I'm always you're worried about never getting married when really and truly, have you got money of your own, right? This is important. So if you didn't know, money buys you healthcare choices, housing choices, geographical freedom. I moved from one country to another. It buys you time, rest, recovery, safety. You can choose maybe a safer area to live, a safer car. I've had to make those kind of decisions, but I've been able to because I know how to generate money. And I do not ever think to myself, I can't have that amount of money, because no. If I want it, I'm going to work for it. It's very simple. Okay, it gives you exit options. And often when we're talking about exit options, it's not simply from a relationship. It could be a job. Maybe you want to change job, you want to change career. You get options. And it's so important to accept that you have been sold a lie, that the desire for money, having money is greed. It is not. It is infrastructure. And when you're a single woman, this is essential. You need to always have infrastructure. You need to be well resourced so that you can exist in your life with a degree of ease. Okay, when you think about getting older, retiring, you have to think to yourself, okay, what do I want my daily life to actually be like in reality? What do I want it to be like? What do I want it to feel like? All of that requires money. Okay, and this is exactly what the single woman economy brief exists to cover: housing, healthcare, retirement, debt, caregiving, travel, insurance, investing, not because these are women's issues per se, but because they are single women economies. Like, this is just the reality as a single woman. You can't be thinking, oh, somebody else is going to do the reading, somebody else is going to do the learning, somebody else is going to take on that responsibility. Okay. And actually, we have to focus in on these things, right? Now, money doesn't solve every problem in life, okay? But a lack of money can make life far more difficult. That's one thing I know. It can make life far more difficult. And here's the thing to understand as a single woman is that you have far more control over your earning potential than you do meeting the right partner. Sorry. One thing that is for sure is money. Yeah, there are ways of getting it. You can do what you like with it, spend, save, invest. The thing that you can't control is meeting the right partner for you under the right circumstances. Yeah, you do have influence over your skills, over income, over investments, over businesses, savings, careers, negotiations, networking. Yeah, you can't control though anything else. You can't. But you can have a degree of control and influence over how money shows up in your life, and how you use money and how you allow money to support you in your life. And so you have to build your financial life as seriously as you're focused in on dating and marriage. You simply do. Okay. And this is what I cover on this channel. That's what I cover. So subscribe. Every single week, I talk about, the single woman economy. What do we need to know? What do we need to understand about money, and making sure that we have money as single women?